Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I have a really fun video for you today, and there is a free download to go with it to show you how to make your own double-sided Quilt-As-You-Go placemats. Now, what inspired me to do this video is I'm seeing tons of videos with Tula Pink's new line out, De La Luna, and everybody is being really fussy and specific in creating fabulous, intimidating quilt designs using this beautiful face as the center, and that can be really challenging for some quilters. So I wanted to give you guys an idea of how you can use this print and really let it show without having to do beautifully paper piece or beautifully English paper piece or really complicated templates, but just really simple. Anybody can do it, Quilt-As-You-Go. So what I've done is with this pattern, one strip roll will get you enough to do the top of 4 placemats and a table runner, or you can do 8 placemats. I'm gonna do 6 in this tutorial, and then I'm probably gonna make something little, like a little table centerpiece with what's left over. That even includes your binding. So you can go a long way with one of these, and I'm of course using Tula De La Luna for it. And then what I did, if you just order a half yard of this, it'll be enough to where you can center the faces for the back or front, whichever way you decide to do it, your placemat. So what I did was I cut 2 from each colorway, and I was able to get 2 of these from each with the fabric. To get your cutting instructions, everything you need for this, just click on the link in the video description for this, or to get to our blog, and we'll have links to where you can get the pattern for this for free, completely free. We want you to have some fun and make some of these for yourself. And then I have also cut some leftover batting to the same size as what's going to be my backing strips. And this was just leftover from the last quilt that I'm working on the long arm, so this is a great way to use up some of those batting scraps as well. You can get everything you need for this project over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Right now, when I'm filming this video, we have lots of strip rolls of the Tula Pink De La Luna, and we have yardage of the moth print and of all of the sisters from the De La Luna Day of the Dead inspired line. And if that doesn't work, we always are getting in new ones, or if this just isn't your taste, I promise you we have something that will work and will look pretty. So go pick out a really big print that you're not quite sure what to do with, or you don't want a fussy cut. This is the way to do it, and then you can pair it with some fun strip rolls and have a really fun table. So of course, step number 1 is getting into our strip roll. And in this one, I'm going to organize the strips by color, and I'm going to sort of sort them out that way when I'm putting my strip together. We've got fuzz everywhere, all over this table. All right, so we've got, I would say these are more in the pink family. Let's put these here. Those are very pink. This is a darker purple, so we're going to keep that by itself. This is more of a medium purple. Let's see what else. We've got some periwinkle. I feel like that can go there as well. We have some good blues. That can be in another section. Some greens that we'll put in even another. This one to me is very dark, but not quite as dark as that. So let's give it its own place and maybe put it with these other grays and dark fabrics. These I feel like are going to fit better with that darker purple that we just had here, as well as this deep one I think will work well, and this one. So there's 3 distinct colorways that the faces are in, but there are really clear color divisions here. So we've got our grays and blacks are more, I don't know, it's not quite magenta, but it's kind of purpley. And then more of a darker purple, sort of midnight. And then we've got our purples and periwinkles, our nice teals, and our hot greens. So when I cut these up, I'm going to keep them in that order, and that way I can just kind of pull and get random color transitions as opposed to the same fabric in each order all the time. That'll make more sense when we get to it, I promise. I'm going to show you a super fast way to cut all these at once. So with the fabric, you should be able to get at least 40 inches out of each one of them. So I cut mine to 13.5 inches, or 13, whatever you can do. 13 is plenty. And that way you're going to have at least that much to be able to go across your placemat, and they can finish at 12 by 16, which is a perfect size to get a good dinner size plate on there. So to cut this all super fast, I'm going to show you how to cut multiple strips at once using the lines on your mat to measure. So what I'm doing is I am lining up all of my edges so that the selvage is hanging off the edge here, and then the fold needs to be beyond whatever half of 13 is, which, let me do some math in my head, 6.5 inches, so it needs to be going past 19.5 inches, which it is right here. So now I'm going to move up 2 inches. Line the next one up. I'm just going to keep going like that until I filled up all of my mat. Now you can see the lines on your mat, and you can use those to measure. So I want to cut at 13 inches. Cut at 13. I'm also going to cut at 0, so I get a nice square edge here with no selvages. And now we've just cut through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 strips into sets of 3 all at once. So this is going to go super, super fast. So at this point, I'm going to start organizing them. So you want to unfold the one that's on the edge. It's obviously probably going to be a little bit longer, but that's okay. This is not like a precision piecing project. This is Quilt-As-You-Go. It's fast. We're just going to get it done. So I'm just unfolding and stacking by color, so that way I can arrange everything later. I'm not flipping it so that all the right sides are up, because we'll be able to do that when we go through everything later. Okay, so I've got the start of these. Now I'm going to repeat with all of my other strips and just keep stacking up colors, and then we're going to start sewing everything together. So in about 15 minutes, I've cut an entire jelly roll down by using that method and organized it in the color order I want to use. So I am ready to get going with this quilt. I'm going to move this stuff to the side, and then we're going to start pulling fabrics. So when I cut these, I did my best to get the face in the center. This would work with any really pretty fabric that you want on the back. It doesn't have to be as specific as this where you're trying to center it, but I just did my best. And I mean, it's going to be a placemat. If it's not perfect, that's okay. There's going to be a plate over her face anyway. So I'm going to lay this so that the wrong side is up. Then I'm going to get my batting scrap, and I'm going to lay that and smooth it out, kind of create my sandwich. You don't need to do anything to base this, because if you use cotton or 80-20 batting, then it's going to stick to the cotton below it. Like I'm lifting up the batting but not the backing, but everything is sticking really nicely. And we're gonna kind of reposition everything as we go, so this is a really fun, fast project. So I'm gonna start with my darkest strip, and I'm gonna lay that down even with the edge of my fabric. because at the end of this, we're gonna cut about 1 inch off all around. So it doesn't have to be totally perfect, but you do want it to be in line. Then I'm just gonna grab whatever's next, as long as it's not the same fabric. So if I were to have like another moth here, I would not do that. I would get something else. And then I'm gonna try to arrange it so that if there is a direction, that it's going the same way. So like right here, I've got a skull and the moth that's going this way, and there's a skull where the top of the head is this way. So I've got them in color order and in the order of direction as well. So now I'm gonna flip this so that it's right sides together. And now it's time to start sewing. Anytime I do anything related to quilting, I put my machiner's quilting gloves on. They've got little grips on the fingertips, which help me move the fabric really easily without a lot of fuss. So I have my walking foot on my machine, and then I have black thread in the top and in the bobbin, because you're going to see your piecing, because when we piece, we're also going to be quilting everything. So I want to roll this over so that it will fit nicely down the throat of my sewing machine. And then I'm just gonna arrange this so that it's nice and straight. If you wanted to pin the top and bottom so that it stays nice and parallel to your edges, you certainly can. I don't get too concerned about it because, you know, if it's not perfectly straight, it's not perfectly straight, it's placemat. You know, it's not precision piecing for, you know, an heirloom quilt, but it is gonna be a pretty cool double-sided placemat when it's done. So I'm just making sure that my edges are nice and lined up here. And then on my walking foot, there is a metal piece that opens up where the feed dog comes in. And if I have the edge of the pinking even with where this metal is, then I sew a 1/4 inch seam. So that's always good to go. And that's just what I use as my guide. If you have a 1/4 inch foot where you can actually set a 1/4 inch seam on it, then that's really cool too, but it's not super necessary. So what I'm doing is I'm just sewing down the edges, trying to keep everything nice and even. Again, if you wanted to pin this, you certainly could. But what I'm doing is I'm making sure my edges stay even with my backing and my batting, and then that the edges of the fabric stay even too. All right, so now we're gonna press this, and then we're gonna be ready to sew our next strip on. I really love to use my cut and press for projects like this because it's nice, small, it will fit right on top of my table, and I can do everything while I'm still sewing without moving around and getting up and going to the iron constantly. So the first thing I need to do is set that seam. Then I'm gonna flip it open like that. And then I'm going to drag my iron up. So I'm starting with the iron completely on that first strip and then dragging it up. And that ensures I get a nice flat seam without any pleats in it. Now I've already used these two. I'm now gonna grab my third piece, and that's gonna become my next one. So now I can just lay it right sides together. Again, you could pin if you wanted to, but as long as you keep your right sides together as you're going, you can treat it like strip piecing and just go straight through. Just like before, we're gonna wanna roll this down so that way it'll fit nicely underneath our sewing throat. We are just gonna keep repeating this process of setting our seam, pressing the next one over until we have filled the entire placemat. That should be about 7 strips. And you can already see there's some nice quilting that's coming through on the back here. You want to make sure whatever thread you use is one that will blend in with what's on the back, because you want it to be double-sided and work when it's going upright as well. It's a good idea as you're going to kind of double check and make sure that everything is still nice and in line. Everything should be the same size from your backing and your batting fabric. So as long as you're kind of keeping everything in line with the rest of it as you go, that's great. So I'm just going to keep going down the line. I've already got the first 3, so now we're going to grab the next color. I'm make sure that everything is going in the same direction. And now we're gonna have some periwinkle. All right, so we've got my first strip where the eye would be next to the eye. I don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the one that's underneath it, which is this cool bat and moon print, and that way we'll use that one instead. And we'll still get the same colorway, but without having to repeat the same print next to each other for some fun variety. All right, so I have gotten through all the color stacks that I put together when I was sorting my colors from my strip roll. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to now go back to the first one, but I don't wanna use the same fabric that I used before, which is this moth print. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna grab all of the moth prints and I'm gonna put them down to the bottom. And so for this next round, I'm going to use what is actually at the top of one of the lady's heads, but we can't see that. We just see the nice dark colors that go with that. And I'm gonna repeat that as I finish and keep going down. And I just kind of keep going in that order through all the placemats. All right, so I have finished sewing the top of my first placemat. I finished with this darker purple, so when I start the second placemat, I'm gonna start with the magenta. And I'm just gonna keep going in color order until I've used all the strips I need to do my placemat, or table runner if you're doing that as well. And that way everyone's just a little bit different and you're not repeating your colors too often, but it still kind of clearly belongs as a set because they all go together and the colors keep changing the same order, even if we're not starting like with this gray on the left each time. We'll start with the magenta one the next time. So I'm going to show you how to trim this down and do your binding, and then we are all done. So we need to trim this down to 12 inches tall by 16 inches wide. And to do that, I'm first going to line up my ruler as close to the edge of that first strip as I sewed as possible. I want to make sure that I'm going to be having all 3 layers going all the way to the edge, and I want to take off as little as possible. That way I've got room to square it up and make it more centered at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself that nice even edge to work with. So now I have at least one right angle. And when you flip it over, you can see that it's going through to all of the sides, so that's good. We're gonna put that little bit to the side. So now I'm gonna do that on the side too. So I'm lining an inch line of the ruler up with that bottom edge that I just got nice and square, but I'm also making sure that I'm as close to the edge as I can be while still being able to cut all of the layers at one time. Now here's where we're going to start to use the mat to measure. I'm flipping this around so that the edge that I just cut on the long side is even with the 0-inch mark on my ruler, and the top edge that we cut first is even with the top edge. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my ruler up so that it is even with the 12-inch mark at the top and at the bottom of my ruler. And you can also double check that you're nice and square, because you should have a 1/2 inch or a 1-inch line even with the edge of the top as well. All right, so now we have placemats that are square on 2 sides and are exactly 12 inches square going down. So now we're gonna cut to 16. Now you can see that I'm actually going to about 16 and a half. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do the same thing I just did before, where I'm going to cut as far down as I can, where I can still get through all 3 layers. I'm not really taking out very much at all, but at this point I want to be able to center it. So I'm at about 16.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 1/4 inch off of this side, and then I'm going to square it up again on the other side, and then I'll have about even amounts on both sides of my placemat, which will look very nice and symmetrical. All right, I'm gonna flip this around. I still have my short edge lined up with the 0 inch mark, and then I've got the top and bottom edge even with any inch line on the mat is fine. And now I'm going to cut exactly at 16 inches, which will take about a 1/4 inch off of the other side. And so now I've got 1.75 inches on this side and just over 1.75 inches on this side. They don't have to be perfect, but they should kind of look symmetrical to your naked eye, and then it will look cute. You just don't want to have like a real skinny one here if you can avoid it. If you can't, that's fine, leave it be. All right, so to bind these, I just use my leftover 13-inch strips. You need about 5 per placemat. And what I do is I kind of just wait until the very end, and then I will piece whatever is left together, and then I will just keep binding in order, and just that way you waste less fabric doing it that way. And it just looks super, super cute. And if you have to learn about how to do binding, we've got a video tutorial on how to do that. I'll link it in the description box below. It's part of our beginner quilting video tutorial series. It's completely free to watch. Shows you how to do continuous binding from start to finish. It's really in depth. Go check it out. But what I do is I just grab these little pieces. The color changes more frequently. It looks really cool, and it's super fun. So this is it. This is your reversible placemat. You have the front, and then on the back, we have this fabulous Tula lady, and it's nice and centered. We've got some nice coordinating thread that's going through there. And so when you're entertaining, you could use either side. So if you're like me and you have a 4-year-old and you might get one side very dirty at a meal, instead of washing them all, you can just flip it over and use this one. And so really fun. I'm gonna get these finished so that way I can show you guys a nice little photo of what they look like at the very end. But that's it. That's all you have to do. So just go make a whole bunch more. Make sure you go download the instructions on how to do this. There are full color graphics and cutting instructions and everything else you need to know to go along with this video. Completely free over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. It's called the Quilt-As-You-Go Placemat, but it will be linked in the video description below as well. Thanks so much for following along. If you enjoyed this video, we have lots of others. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. We're uploading new video tutorials every week. Plus there are hundreds of old ones that you can choose from. So lots of really great stuff. Make sure you also hit the bell notification so that way you're notified every single time something new is up. Thanks for following along, and happy quilting.